Well, good evening. I'm Devora Krasnianski from Adai Ad, and this is from our Shidduch U, Shidduch University series. Tonight, we'll be talking with Dr. David Mark about all kinds of important things about Shidduchim. And as we get started, Dr. David, could you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do in marriage and relationships?
Yeah, so because you asked about relationships and marriage, I'll start with relationships first. So I would say that, from the moment that I wake up until the moment I go to bed, we are all engaging in relationships. And the relationships that I engage in involve obviously waking up and talking to God, and my relationship with my children, my wife, people I work with, the students that I teach in DRS high school, teenage boys. And then, of course, in the evenings, I come and work with couples and not marriage, but people seeking better connections and stronger bonds in their relationships with people who they want to love forever. But what I do is, so I believe basing your work, basing in terms of clinically and professionally, just using science has always been helpful for me, knowing that the things that I'm doing have been researched by somebody, and I know that there's a good chance it'll work, right? My Bobby and Zadie had good advice, and my dad had great advice, but maybe that was just good advice. When something's been tried on hundreds of people and hundreds of couples, and then 80% of the time it comes true, there's a good chance it'll come true with strangers who you're just trying to help. So I think looking at science and research is really, really an important component for learning how to learn what works for most people in most situations.
So we discussed that you're a Gottman certified therapist. Could you tell us what that means?
Yeah, so I'm actually certified in the Gottman method, and I'm also certified in what's called emotion-focused therapy. So John and Julie Gottman, and Sue Johnson I would say, are the leading researchers today in marriages and relationships, and what makes relationships work and what makes them not work. And so what it means in both of those cases is this process to get certified takes about 2 to 3 years. And I would say it's probably about 30 or 40 hours of one-on-one training, whether in a group or one-on-one, along with some private consultation. It also involves being videotaped and sending those videotapes of you and your couples in for review by the institutions, and those institutions saying, you know how to do our method, or them saying, you're not that good at our method yet, so we can't quite give you this rubber stamp of being certified, but go back and work on this a little bit more, and hopefully one day you'll persist and become an expert at our method, and we'll say that you are now an expert at our method. That's what being certified means. And as a couples therapist, I always want to be like the best therapist possible. I want to be the best dad possible. I want to be the best teacher possible. I want to be the best husband possible. But when I'm working with other people, they're trusting me with their lives. And not only that, but they're also trusting me with their children's lives. So I have to really, really know that I am putting my best foot forward. And part of that is being properly trained. This says out of John Gottman's research, actually, 8 out of 10 therapists providing couples therapy have no advanced training in couples therapy. And that's kind of a sad number. I forget the name of the organization that makes referrals for Jewish Orthodox people. Help me out, Devora.
Mask?
Not Mask. Say
Relief?
one.
Relief?
Yes, thank you. I knew you would know. So Relief actually has a really cool process for putting therapists in their network. And they actually, their process is they sit you down, and basically 9 or 10 people sit and interview you for like 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really an interesting process. And they actually told me that their understanding is that in the Orthodox circles, that 9 out of 10 therapists have no advanced training in couples therapy. And I get a little bit snobby in this area because I've worked so hard to travel around the world to chase the best people ever. I think I've been very blessed. I was in John Gottman's house a couple of years ago on an affair study research team. I waited for certain trainings and chased to be directly trained by Sue Johnson. I've worked really hard to get trained by the best people because I love to make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward. So what it means to be certified is that you're basically being called an expert in a certain approach by their institutions.
All right. So we're really talking to someone who really, really knows. So thank you.
I hope I really know, and I hope the words I have to share tonight can land on people and can be helpful. I'm still learning every single day. I happen to be certified and I pass these certifications, but I'm still learning every single day. And I love good books about all of these subjects.
So when you have couples coming into your office, what are you seeing? Maybe it's something that you can share with, from what you're seeing, you can share with people who are in dating and shidduchim.
Yeah, so, it's a great question. And the research, again, guides me, right? So one of the things, so there's two areas of research. The OU did a study that Dr. Pelkovitz kind of helped organize, and they sent out something like 3,600 surveys to all the way from traditional Judaism to Hasidic, people who identify as Hasidic, so Orthodox, modern Orthodox, and they were surveying relationship satisfaction. And there are 5 areas that John Gottman's research tells us that couples have the most difficult time in. And there was a 6th area that emerged from the OU study. So the 6th area that emerged from the OU study, the OU found the same 5 as the Gottman Institute, which I'll tell you in a second. But the 6th area that emerged from couples or Orthodox Jewish couples was work-life balance.
Interesting.
Yeah, and look, it makes sense, right? It's costly to maintain our lifestyle and to serve Hashem properly, right? I actually, in my class today at DRS, I actually asked the boys, we have 25 boys in the class, and I said, how many of your moms stay home and only focus on the home? And I said, I bet you it's about only 20%. And sure enough, 5 boys raised their hands. 19 years ago, when I asked this question, it actually flip-flopped. Only 5 boys raised their hand that their mothers worked.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think over time, there's been a lot more pressure on the frum community to maintain our lifestyle. Whether it's kashrus, I'm not talking about fancy bar mitzvahs and vacations. I'm just talking about Jewish day school expenses, kosher food, not even keeping up with the Joneses or the Rosenbergs, whoever those people are. But so work-life balance is one of the areas, and this is more inside of marriage, after marriage. I'm not talking about pre-marriage. But the other 5 areas that come up in relationships are issues with money, differences in how they handle money, differences in how extended family is handled, differences in religion, and then parenting differences. And parenting differences, usually for frum Jews, what I found, this is anecdotally, not research, for parenting differences for frum Jews, most frum Jews know they'd like to have a baby, at least one. That's not what frum Jews fight about. What they fight about is the parenting differences of how to raise these children. What are the best parenting methods? And then the 5th area is sex. So sex, money, religion, parenting differences, and extended family. And for frum families, it's work-life balance. And I think the last one really speaks to making sure that we're still having fun. When we dated, we had fun, but we have to have fun with our spouses. yeah, you have to make sure you're having fun. Like it could be something silly as playing a board game together, but there's got to be some way that you maintain having fun with the person who you go to bed with at night.
Mhm. All right. So in addition to that, what is something that people who are dating can be looking for? Because some of these things we can't yet know about.
Great. Yes, that's a great question. So first I'll make a general statement, and then I'll kind of make some statements for maybe more toward women. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Yeah, and I have a book recommendation.
50% of the people who need to hear it. Go ahead.
Okay, good. At least good. So what do you look for, right? It's such a great question. And the general broad statement, and this comes from the world of Sue Johnson and what's known as attachment theory. And what you look for is this person that I'm dating, are they accessible, responsive, and can they stay engaged? So what does that mean exactly, right? So you go out on a date for 5 hours. It's a great date. And then all of a sudden, whether it's partner A or B, you start texting this person the next day, but they don't respond all day. And that's kind of a flag, I think, because now this person who was so attentive, so with you for 5 hours, can't find 30 seconds to even write, thinking about you, so busy today, we'll get back to you at 5, I can't wait to talk to you. Because that doesn't take more than 30 seconds. But the person who can't respond, they'll come up with some sort of excuse, but we have to know that all it is excuses. There was a great book written by these authors who actually are the writers for a television show. And the name of the book is He's Just Not That Into You. Oftentimes I hear single women making excuses for men who are really just not that into them. And the best thing to do is to move on and say, this guy can't find 5 seconds to call me during the day or send me a text. Guess what's going to happen when you get married? It's going to be a lot of hurt feelings, right? I have daughters. And, I tell my daughters, you want someone who's going to treat you like a queen. That's non-negotiable. You're a queen. You want to be treated like such. And that means that you got to find time. You have to remain, you're looking for a partner. And again, whether it's men or women, you're looking for someone who can be accessible, responsive, and engaged, right? So accessibility means, can I create some sort of response or be available if my person that I'm dating, says something? Can I access what they're saying? Can I respond to it in a way that's not critical or harsh or shaming or blaming? Those are ways of staying responsive. And can I stay engaged with this subject even if I disagree with it? So you want to know a red flag? So John Gottman's got these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. It's probably one of his greatest findings, and it's the #1 predictor for relationship breakup. And I can actually screen share it. Should I try to find it? Maybe it might be helpful. I have it on my computer. I'll talk and find it at the same time.
Can I ask a question while you're finding it?
Yeah, sure.
Why would someone make excuses for somebody else if they don't feel like they're getting the attention that they want?
That's a really broad question. There's like 8 million reasons. I think maybe they really like this person and they want to make excuses for them. Maybe they have a lower self-esteem and think, well, all these things are good. It's just this one thing that I don't really like. So they make excuses for that one thing. And I'm not saying that you need to find the perfect package. That doesn't exist either. But if you find yourself making excuses for somebody early on in the dating process or in the dating process, then you're going to probably be living with those things that you don't like for a long time. If you can live with that, then that's fine, right? But I have daughters. I want my future son-in-laws. I mean, my daughters aren't ready to get married, but I want my future son-in-laws to treat my daughters like queens and make them feel special and make them feel desired. And it means also having a balance of autonomy and independence, but also saying, yes, I know this person's going to be there for me. Does that make sense?
Totally. Does it work also the other way? That is, you're just saying daughters, but it really is both genders.
So, I don't, it's interesting. I don't know of the book of She's Just Not That Into Me. But right now, the only book that I've read is, it's really the No Excuses Truth to Understanding Guys. That's the part of the title. I think I could be wrong about this, and this is not research, but I think oftentimes women feel more pressure to get married in our community, and they might make an excuse for a guy, but really maybe that guy is just not that into you, and that's okay. And the best thing to do is find the guy who is just that into you. I have a buddy, my buddy Gabe. He would not settle, and I'm not recommending this for everybody. It worked for him. He did not get married for the first time until he was about 40, and at about because he didn't find the right girl, the right woman, and at age 40 he did, and he's a father. He has a baby, and he's happily married, and he's 40, almost 49. So I think it's important to make sure that if there are things that are important to you, that you don't give up on those things.
So does that mean that if he's not into you from that title, but he is really not into you, but he could be, so with the right person, he'd be very interested, and he would find the 30 seconds, and he'd find again 30 seconds to be texting back. So in other words, the guy who says, like, maybe I'm just not a responsive person, again, we're just using the genders that you're talking to, or is he just really not into it, and that's why he's not spending that time to.
So if a guy says, hey, I'm not such a responsive person in that way, but a woman's okay with that, and that could work. But I don't know many women who don't want to feel, meaning from the work that I've done for the last 24 years with couples, I haven't met many women who would be okay with that. Most women want to feel desired. They want to feel pretty. They want to feel that their partner is into them. And certainly they would want a text during the day that says, hey, I'm thinking about you. So if you're okay with that, then that might work. But know that's if that's what you're entering into early on, then know that might not ever change. That makes sense?
It makes sense. So we got onto this part of the subject when we started talking about attachment. We go back to attachment.
Okay. And what related to you? Well, there was a question that you asked me about in terms of what are things you could look for while you're dating.
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. So let's just answer that question first and clean that up. So while you're dating, if you experience any of these, so John Gottman, this is his greatest finding. Can you see them?
Yeah, we can see that.
Super great. So John Gottman predicts relationship separation if these four horsemen are there. He makes a prediction that with 92% accuracy, he can predict the breakup of the relationship. And what are these four things that he calls the four horsemen? If you see these in the relationship or in a dating relationship, and it doesn't change, then this is a super duper red flag. And what are they? So the way he defines criticism is shaming, lots of shaming and blaming, and you statements. And the antidote to that is talking about yourself, about your own emotions, versus talking about the other, about the person you're with. Usually it's a neurological response that when you feel criticized or attacked, your brain automatically gets defensive. So something that you're looking for in relationships and dating is you want to know that the other person can take responsibility, right? Oh, I messed up. I'm really sorry. That was really my bad. I shouldn't have said that. Or something like, yeah, I really own this thing that I do. Right? Those are things that you should look for. But hyper defensive-ness is something that I would also call a red flag. Being spoken down to is contempt. Usually in more settled relationships, you see it name calling, but in dating relationships, I would say if you feel like your partner's talking down to you, that would be contempt. And stonewalling would be shutting off and turning into a stonewall. Hopefully you don't see that in a dating relationship, because if you do, you're in real trouble. You probably shouldn't continue, because some of the good stonewallers can shut you out for a good couple of days, but it's super destructive in relationships.
Could we say then that if someone is blaming others, not necessarily the one they're dating, but somebody else, like when they talk about stories like from school days or whatnot, and they blame everything was the teacher's fault and the other classmates' fault, and is that a way of seeing if they are more of a
That's
critic?
interesting, right? Well, then the question is, are they good at, what do they own from the time that they were struggling in school, or was it just everybody else's fault? Yeah, I don't know. There's a mindset of taking responsibility versus, oh, this was all everybody else's fault. Probably that partner is going to end up being the fault as well, versus the partner you're talking about taking ownership and responsibility. Does that make sense?
We're looking for just a general idea of taking responsibility, not only that he's blaming you, the dater, when he's dating, or she's dating. It's just in general, does they take responsibility? Do they not blame others? Do they not play victim? Do they not?
Yeah, I think those are all like very, very, really good things to look for in dating, whether male or female, right? Does this person I'm dating, do they take ownership and responsibility for, well, the good things we can always take responsibility for, right? But when they mess up, or when they have messed up in life, right? Do they take ownership and say, yeah, this was really my issue. I figured this out, and this is what I learned from that.
Which I think is great to say that we learn from it. Is just that model of showing the growth mindset. I think is so super important for any relationship.
Yeah, that work, that's Carol Dweck's work, and it is super important to be able to to train one's mind. And we are trainable. There's an idea called neuroplasticity, where the brain is very malleable. The brain can be shaped from new experiences. And when you have new experiences, you can learn to have what she calls a growth mindset. I think she's even got a chapter there called post-traumatic growth. So even if somebody has had a traumatic experience in their life, right, what work have they done to address that traumatic experience? Oftentimes those people are better to be in a relationship with from the work they've done versus someone that hasn't had that kind of trauma.
I say that all the time. We had a whole series last year about people who had trauma or challenged childhoods or addictions, and I think every single one of the therapists said that if they work through it, then they are strong, and they work through. They're stronger on the other side of it, and they actually can bring a lot more into a relationship than somebody who either had that and didn't work through it, or didn't even just had a pretty smooth little life, which is also wonderful. But it's just people who work through it.
Yeah, a good, and again, nothing is a hard and fast rule, but an interesting thing, because you mentioned the word addiction. So I guess in the dating process, something that, you had, when we spoke before our meeting here, you had asked me about dating. And since you mentioned addiction, and what to look for is, you're looking for not a partial recovery, but recovery where the person has at least 1 year of recovery under their belt. The interesting thing about addiction, because it's a disease of the brain, the same recovery percentages for cancer actually match those of addiction. What do I mean? Yeah. So what do I mean? When somebody has had 3 or more years of being cancer-free, and again, these numbers aren't exact, but they're rough, there's like a 60 to 70% chance that they're going to stay cancer-free. When someone's had 3 years of sobriety, there's about a 60 to 70% chance they're going to stay in recovery. And once that number hits 5 years, I believe for cancer and for addiction, the number goes up to like over 85% chance that they'll stay in recovery. So look, some of the greatest people I know are in recovery, and I honor these people the most for what they've accomplished in life. Truly, it's unbelievable what you could do with hard work and with using the 12 steps. But that's something to look for in dating. At least a year of recovery, and 3 and 5 years is even better.
So the therapist were explaining last time they talked about with addiction recovery is that it's not only the amount of time, it's actually the stress season. So like you go through at least 2 Simchas Torahs, at least 2 stressful Pesachs. So it's not only the length of time. So
that's interesting. Meaning that they should see what they're like during Sukkot and then the following Pesach.
And again, twice, 2 Sukkot and 2.
Oh, wow. That's
So
that seems like a long time. That's a higher standard than I even mentioned, right?
Yeah, I'm just bringing that up because I thought that was very interesting. It wasn't just the length of time, it was to see how to know that you can deal with the stress that comes from those stressful times.
Yeah, and since you mentioned the word stress, that's another buzzword. The number one cause of relapse is relationship stress. I'm not saying that the intimate partner should intentionally cause relationship stress to see if the person relapses, but look, all relationships ultimately have some sort of stress at some point or another. That's life. And the question is, can the couple deal with that stress together as a couple versus dealing with it individually? And that's the having a coupleship in recovery is one of the greatest predictors for ongoing recovery. When there's a solid relationship at home with intimate partners, that is something that really, really strengthens recovery tremendously.
So, I mean, if we're talking about addiction, which wasn't really our original topic, but I think it's a great question anyway. Let's go with it. If someone is in recovery, and so how could the one who is dating that person know if they are a good support, or is it going to come back? Like if someone's like like you said before, like the coupleship could actually help it, or you also said before that the coupleship could actually add a lot of stress. So is there indicators to know that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that has to happen, especially in our circles, is there has to be a lot of education about what does that word addiction even mean? What's the possible prognosis? What am I living with? What am I making a choice to live with? There needs to be a lot of individual education before you get involved with anybody that is in recovery. Just because you have to understand, you can't support somebody if you don't understand what it is. So first, education, and second is that's a great opportunity for connection, to be supportive with your partner's disease. Addiction is a disease. It's no different than any other disease. If you date somebody that has hyperthyroidism, right? That's a disease that has to be managed. And if it's not managed well, it can affect mood greatly. And there's different treatments for that disease. The best treatment for addiction is a 12-step program. Something like over 4 million people have been helped by the 12-step program, and it works. And right, and the choice of treatment for hyperthyroidism, I think, is an endocrinologist, right? You got to go to the right doctor. So I think learning what it is first, learning what addiction is, and learning, and again, it all goes back to being accessible, responsive, and engaged, right? So can I remain accessible to my partner who has an addiction? Can I remain responsive? Can I stay engaged? Can I have these conversations and be supportive?
So does that mean bringing in their therapist or their sponsor?
I would say there's no hard and fast rule here. I think that that's part of a discussion that you have with your partner. Hopefully there's enough trust in the relationship that maybe that is a thing that the couple wants to do, but that would be the individual's decision. And then of course the couple to decide to do that together. Maybe that's necessary to learn how can, the non-addicted partner be supportive and making sure that they're not engaging in any sort of codependent behavior.
Okay, which gets us into the next question. Could you describe what codependency is?
So there's a great book by a woman named Melody Beattie called "Codependency No More." I probably have it.
So do I. Okay.
Yeah, it's the Bible of codependency, and there's no one simple definition. But the way that I like to look at it is, which I think she actually writes about, is the 3 C's, right? Can I cure this person? Am I going to be controlling? And did I cause this person to be this way, right? So the codependent, a good unhealthy codependent would try to cure this person. Did you go to meetings? How many meetings are you going to? Are you going to go? You're going to go? You have to go to meetings, right? I caused you to be this way. Oh God, you're drinking again because of me, right? Which obviously isn't true. It's the responsibilities on the individual. Caused, cure, and control, and codependents are also very controlling. So cause, cure, and control is a nice way to identify a codependent. If you are in recovery, you want to pay attention if the person you're dating has any of those 3 C's.
How can you notice that? How can you notice that in a dating situation?
So a great ask about other intimate relationships. So ask about, do you find, you could ask it straight up. Do you find yourself controlling? I mean, maybe that's too invasive. I don't know if anyone would answer that. Yes, but you can ask about other intimate relationships. That's how I would explore that. Tell me about your relationship with your mom. Tell me about your relationship with your dad. Who are the special people that you're vulnerable with in your life? I want to know about those people.
Mm-hmm. Or your roommates, or your study partners.
If those are the people that you're vulnerable with, maybe they're not. But I would want to know, who are the people you've been vulnerable with in your life, and tell me about why you're able to be vulnerable with them. Because vulnerability is where the connection and the bond is at.
How does that relate to codependence, the vulnerability?
Well, somebody who's codependent, the partner in recovery would not be able to be vulnerable. There's too much control. There's too much curing and too much unhealthy behavior. Codependency is another word for unhealthy relationship behavior. That's all it is. And Melody Beattie writes beautifully on this topic. I actually give that book out to anybody that wants to be in a healthy relationship. That's a great book for dating. You want to know about healthy relationships? Read Codependency No More. That is such a great book. Just how do I want to live in a healthy relationship? Read that book.
And John Gottman's books too.
So look, if I could, I love reading books, but sometimes you don't get people to read so many books.
Okay.
But the other, if you said what I mean, well, now so it's hard to say what books would you want people to read. So there's a great book that has an attachment lens to it, which I think, if you said, what's the one book that you would want a couple to read before they're dating, right? So this book called Attached by this guy, Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. So they basically write about adult attachment and how it can help you find and keep love. That's the title of their book. And what it does is you have to realize there's 3 attachment styles that emerged out of the original writings of attachment: secure attachment, avoidant attachment, and anxious attachment. And none of them are bad. They're just styles. They're not bad. It's not bad if you have avoidant attachment, and it's not bad if you have anxious attachment. The important component.
David, 1 second. Can you just take off that share screen so we can see you?
Sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not bad if you have everyone in certain scenarios has different styles of attachment. I once heard a therapist recently say that the researchers today in attachment, they doubt anybody is securely attached. Actually, to say that you're securely attached doesn't exist because the world is just not that predictable. The way it was described early on in the research was safety, security, and predictability, right? And then when we think about children, we want to make sure that their worlds are safe, secure, and predictable. When Sue Johnson came on the attachment scene in the 70s, she said, this attachment thing really applies to adults. And what we're looking for in adults is, can this person be accessible, responsive, and engaged? So if I say something like, hey, you really made me upset about what you said about my family. So does the partner get defensive, or does the partner say, oh, tell me what upset you. I'd love to hear. One makes the partner accessible, and one kind of shuts down the conversation. And you want to see if those conversations can keep going. I'm a more forthright person. So thank God I'm not dating. I'm happily married for 17 and a half years. And I guess, I don't know, I'm excited to help my kids date when they're ready, but I'm a more forthcoming person. I would say, yeah, tell me about the people that you fight with. Tell me how. Yeah, fighting is a requirement, almost a prerequisite for intimacy in relationships. I get very concerned if a couple tells me that they don't fight at all. Very concerned. It means that you're not really speaking your mind, or you're afraid to speak, or but what fighting does, I mean, I'm not saying vicious fighting or aggression. I'm saying, conflict, disagreements. These are prerequisites for intimacy, because it requires you to use muscles to see your partner's side, understand their emotions, understand their triggers. It involves taking responsibility and coming up with an action plan that you don't get into the same fight again. But it breeds closeness if you know how to repair from a regrettable or the aftermath of a fight.
So in dating, it totally makes sense. So in dating, when you don't have that relationship yet, if you don't make it through that conflict, then you don't have to be with a couple. I mean, if you choose not to. So it's basically, when I work with clients, I always recommend that they have some sort of conflict before they could commit to marriage. Just that, see the experience and see how that works. Can you have a conflict and work it out? How does that make you feel? Do you feel put down? Do you feel heard? And all of that. So it's really important to have that conflict in dating.
100%. Both John Gottman and Sue Johnson. John Gottman's got an exercise called the aftermath of a regrettable incident, or the aftermath of a fight, where he shows couples through a 5-step process how to repair the fight. I ran through it quickly. I could say it again if that's helpful. The 5-step process is: step 1 is just recognizing the feelings. Step two is, sharing feelings that this fight, caused from each partner. Step two is the subjective realities. Can I hear what my partner went through, their reality, and validate it and understand it, right? Or am I too caught up in my own world? Someone that's too caught up in their own world and can't see your side, I would say that's a little bit of a flag, That's part two. Part three is exploring the triggers, right? What made you get so heightened or so upset by this thing? There must be something in your past that resembles those emotions. And step four is taking responsibility. What kind of set you up for the miscommunication, and actually apologizing for something specific that you did, right? Sometimes you hear people say, yeah, my partner never says sorry. Not the best, right? That's a lack of responsibility. And step five is creating an action plan to make sure this fight doesn't happen again.
And so some of that may or may not be relevant in
dating.
But
Right.
the idea, but if you actually listen to those again, and you can listen to the recording, if you see yourself as being not so great in any of those, it's worth working on, because it's not going to be great for whatever marriage you do get into.
Yeah, Sue Johnson's got a whole chapter. I forget the title of the chapter, but in her book, Hold Me Tight, she's got a whole chapter about talking about past regrettable incidents and fights that couples have had. So either way, even if you're in the dating process, you're going to have disagreements. And it's important to be able to talk about those disagreements when negative emotions emerge from those disagreements.
So, and if you're not having disagreements, does that mean, if you're not having disagreements when you're dating, does that mean that someone is not speaking their mind?
Yeah, I would say yes. It concerns me. It's super concerning that one partner, if both partners have no disagreements or conflicts, then that's also concerning. It means that somebody's not totally sharing something that they really need or want. I don't think it's normal for two adults to spend lots of time together, figure out how they're going to engage in life together, and just agree perfectly on everything. I don't know. Do you think that's possible for that to exist?
I've seen that people do it though, because they just want to make this work, and then what they're doing is setting themselves up for the conflicts afterwards.
Yeah. So I don't know. Is that a good idea? I don't know.
What are you finding? You're the one who finds them in your office.
Well, I'm finding that that's a huge mistake. That there's something like for example, right? So here, marijuana is legalized, right?
Yes.
So right, so nobody puts this on their Shidduch resume that they smoke marijuana, right? But and there are times possible that one partner might either smoke, or you don't even have to smoke. You could get oil, you could get gummies. There's look, we're here in Nassau County, we're in Cedarhurst. There's a store less down the block from me that sells this stuff. So, right? So do you disclose this to your dating partner, or do you wait until you're married? I don't think it's fair to not disclose that you're using mind-altering substances during the dating process. And there needs to be a talk about it. It's no different than drinking alcohol behind your partner's back, right? If you say, no, I never touch alcohol, but on Shabbos, you go to the Kiddush and have 2 or 3 shots of hard whiskey, that's also not okay. These things need to be open discussions. And it doesn't mean if somebody's using marijuana or using or having a shot at a Kiddush once a week, that doesn't mean that they have a problem.
But the idea of holding it back or withholding it, knowingly withholding it, or even hoping it doesn't come up, I think is some level of betrayal.
I think I would agree with you. It could be betrayal. Yes. I could easily see how the partner who was not in the know could feel betrayed easily. 100%.
And a big part of dating is about making sure, or for yourself, that you want to know that you're accepted by the other person with your strengths and with those things that you're not proud of. If you're hiding it, then it's something that that is possibly that someone may not like, so you're hiding it or withholding it. And those are more the things that you should be sharing, because otherwise it could really blow up.
100%. And that's a flag on the field for the person doing the hiding. The person who's not doing the hiding. But anything that if you think that your person that you're dating isn't going to like something, then you need to raise that during the dating period, even before engagement. It's really unfair that, because you're hiding it for a reason, right? And I'm not saying that marijuana or a shot at Kiddush needs to be hidden. I'm saying that it needs to be a discussion, and you should be open about it at some point during the dating period, if that's something you do.
Because again, if it's going to blow up, it's not, you're not going to have to hide it forever. And if you're going to be hiding it forever, you're hiding a whole part of your life. So if it's maybe something that you did when you were 16, you maybe don't have to share it, but think something you're currently doing and maybe going to bring it into your future. I mean, yes, you may hope that you'll stop drinking, but if you're not stopping to drink right now, then you can't just hope it away.
I forget the exact percentages, but those teenagers from 15 and under that have had a drink or used any sort of mind-altering substance, including marijuana, the rates of addiction increase something by like 80%, only because you said the age 16.
But if they did it once when they were 16 and now they're 25 and they haven't done it in between, I don't know that that's what the statistics.
I don't know if there's any hard and fast rules about what must be shared, but
Fair.
But I think that's a discussion that those people should have on a date. Hey, if you did something when you were 16 that you're not so proud of, are you comfortable sharing that with me? I understand you haven't done it in 9 years, but I'm just curious. Are you okay to share that with me?
Right.
I want to learn as much as I can about the person that I'm choosing to spend the rest of my life with. That's a long time.
So and a lot of responsibilities together.
Yes. So I'd like to know as much as possible.
So you can definitely ask and get out of your comfort zone and ask everything. So some people don't want to bring up things that are potentially uncomfortable or potentially could ruin the shidduch, which is ironic because it could just blows up later.
Yeah. It's kind of like, people put so much energy and time into the wedding and not the marriage. Right. It's a you lose focus on what's really important. The wedding is just one day. The marriage is for life. And we have to focus on the marriage, not the wedding day.
Totally. But again, some people don't want to have uncomfortable conversations. And I think the thinking about why don't I want to bring this up is part of what you should be thinking about. Generally with myself, do I always withhold what I'm feeling, or is it something with this person specifically that I'm withholding? Why am I not wanting to bring this up?
And that's another great question, Devora, right? On a shidduch date, right? How do is it acceptable to ask the other person, how do you talk about things that you don't want to talk about?
I love that question.
Maybe we should make a deck of cards for shidduch dates that can really push on people to talk about the things they don't really want to talk about.
I actually made a deck of cards. It's called Convos, David, and I would love to show them.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
I have a whole bunch of such questions, especially because people don't want to ask them certain questions. So the card asking the questions, and it works really well for people.
Oh, I would love to see it. Yeah, I think there's a word called meta, which is meta-analysis is you do a data analysis on the data. Metacognition is what do you think about thinking? Meta emotions is what are your feelings about feelings? So whenever you put the word meta before something, it makes you think about the thing even more, right? So how do you talk about things you don't want to talk about? Right? That's a great question I don't know how somebody who's avoidant, the person who's avoidant hopefully will say, yeah, I usually avoid those things. And then the person who's not avoidant says, might view that as a flag, but I don't know if it's such a red flag, because then the next question could be, well, how do I make it comfortable for you not to be avoidant with me?
Right.
What do you need from me so that way you don't have to avoid me, so we can have these conversations because ultimately those conversations are very bonding and very connecting. And that's what holds the relationships together. Right. It's the vulnerability.
Right. Especially the vulnerability. I guess the more the more chance that it's risky, that you may is what makes it more connecting.
100%. Right. And the risk is that ultimately this person will leave, right? But I think the reward is much greater than the risk when you do the math.
Well,
right?
especially when we're dating, that if they want to leave because of what you said, then you want to know that now rather than 4 years into a marriage.
That's correct. Right. Yes, exactly. 100%.
Because these things can't be held forever.
Yeah, I don't think
very
they
long
are,
time.
right? Yeah, I don't think they usually, all the stuff usually comes out in relationships.
And sooner
eventually.
than later.
Yeah, I think that's true. Ultimately, everything comes out, or just about everything. Yeah. Wow, time flies when we're having fun. I didn't realize that we're almost an hour in.
Yeah, I have one question that came in.
Sure.
It's on a different topic, but let's go with it, and you can see if you want to answer it. A girl I'm involved with has been sexually abused multiple times. She's been told by her therapist not to reveal those previous incidents in her youth through her dating process. What are your thoughts?
Wow. I don't, again, I don't like hard black and whites. Someone that's had one, I think they need a new therapist, because someone
That was my
first
thought.
of all, someone that's been through complex trauma, meaning ongoing sexual trauma, and they're told not to talk about it, that's concerning to me. Again, I'm not saying talk about it on the street corners, but hopefully, because you want that trauma to be processed in a way that you can exist as with a secure attachment style, even with that trauma, right? Oftentimes trauma like that creates either more avoidant or more anxious attachment styles, right? Or could even lead to some sort of addiction, even depending on how many other adverse childhood experiences that person had. So again, I think to develop a certain amount of trust in the dating relationship, and ultimately talk about that before engagement.
Well, it's definitely going to show up in the marriage.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know. I think if it's held as a secret, then it might become this thing in the person's head. So then maybe it might. Again, what I've learned is that nothing's definite, and nothing's always, and nothing's never. I think it has to be, I think it should be, again, it's a very vulnerable piece of information. And my hope for that person that's been through that is that they can talk about that during the dating process and have done enough trauma work to explain to their dating partner what this means for them and how it's made them a stronger person, and it's made them actually a better, maybe has made them a better sex partner, and that there's nothing to worry about in this area. Or maybe it's made them a more intimate partner. It's made them be able to be more vulnerable. But these are, I don't think there's any hard and fast rule. That's a very personal thing that I don't think we can ever put a stamp on and say this person must share. What would be the best situation? I think the best situation is that that person can talk about it when they trust their dating partner. What if they never trust their dating partner? Well, then keep dating them if you want to marry them, but don't get engaged if you don't trust them with the most precious things in your life.
I guess the thing is they'll be concerned that they'll say no. And it just keeps always coming back to that they're concerned they'll say no.
Guess what? Maybe that person's just not that into the other person. And if somebody can't accept me for the trauma that I've been through, then I don't want to be with you. I'm looking for someone that can accept me for what I experienced. I didn't do those things. Those were unfortunate circumstances that person experienced, or that, right? And I think that you're looking for someone who can stay back to the initial piece, right, about accessibility, responsiveness, and engagement. Does my partner take interest in me about that. Oh my gosh, what happened? Oh my God, that's horrible. I can't even imagine, right? Oh my God, please, if you ever want to talk to me, I'm here for you, right? That's what accessibility, responsiveness, and engagement looks like. Versus, well, I don't know. And there's a lot of stigma in our circles around that stuff, but certainly if somebody said, yeah, it doesn't affect me at all, right? That's a flag on the field. I wouldn't, I would throw a flag on the field at that and be concerned about somebody who's been, has complex sexual trauma, to say, wake up and say, yeah, that doesn't affect me at all. That I believe will show up later in a marriage for sure. Most likely, let's not even say for sure. High chance that'll show up. If someone's done no work, I'd be concerned about that.
I guess if they do bring it up, they do believe that they're trusting that person, and they do bring it up, and the other person says, I can't deal with it. You want to know that earlier. So yes, you did share something very private and very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it's always a risk, but either you'll get much closer, like you said, the more vulnerable we are, we get closer, or you will find out before it's too late that this person can't deal with it or doesn't want to deal with it.
Right, exactly. Or how they're going to deal with it, right? The minute you share the information, and again, you don't have to share for someone that's had complex trauma. You can share something that's less invasive and see how they deal with it. Share something that's happened to you. Some girls, and I was picked on as a kid in the playground. See where that goes. That's less invasive.
Yeah, that builds up. And last question, David. How do you know if you trust somebody? What does trust look like?
What does trust look like? Maybe it feels more like something than what it looks like. It's a great question. It's such a great question, Oh my gosh, what a great question. How do you know if you trust someone? They keep their word. I would say it's built through action. And again, maybe for someone else, it's some other ingredient, but I would say that it's built through action. Is this person dependable? Are they going to be where they say they're going to be when they say they're going to be there? If their mother needs them and their married partner needs them, who do they go to? Who comes?
Okay, we're talking about dating. We're talking about dating. So
sorry.
Partner,
okay,
yeah.
sorry. I know that was a high conflict statement. Okay, dating. How do you know when you trust someone? So look, it depends. Look, trust, it takes time, right? How do you know you trust the people who raise you? That's a lifetime of building, right? That you trust when your kids say, yeah, my parents are awesome, I trust them. That takes a lifetime to build. Right, but sometimes, the dating process could range anywhere from a month to a couple of years. So I don't know, can you build trust in a 2-month time period if you spend time on the phone? And I don't know, I don't trust people who make excuses. That's me. Right. Excuses are for the waste, show me action, show me that you're doing stuff.
Well, a certain amount to the way how they respond. Do you trust them? And how they talk about themselves and other people? There is a certain amount that we don't have the time. We don't date in that way. We also don't do a lot of things together. So there's
so how do you build trust in a short time span? That's I don't know. Yeah, I think it's doable. I think again through action, through and again what you just said is also an action, right? Being there for the person, being able to remain accessible, I would say builds trust. Being able to be emotionally responsive builds trust, right? Men and women want that. They want emotionally responsive partners. And again, all of that I would say is also considered action, right? If I tell you I'm going to be there at 7:00 and I show up at 7:05, did I give you a phone call to let you know I'll be 5 minutes late? That's considerate, I think, right? Or am I stuck in a meeting and I call you and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed, this is horrible, I can't get you until 8, is that okay? Right? And look, I don't know if that should happen too early on in the dating process either, right? I don't know if that should happen too many times, even if you married 17 years, right? You have to know how to set good boundaries with work and
It circles right back to the very beginning, work-life balance.
That's right. It does, because that's also a thing, right? And if that happens continuously during the dating process, guess what? I'm sure that's going to happen during the marriage process too. I would be cautious about that. But that trust question is a great question. How would you answer that question, Devora? How do you know in the dating process when you trust the person?
Well, one of the things I would suggest is to actually journal about, if you're concerned about it, just journal, see what comes out of your pen.
I love it.
So, and we actually did a talk about journaling. So if you want to anyone wants to find that on our website, we did a Shlomo Beres about journaling. So that was really a good one. And I think that's to trust your own instincts, so to get to tune into your own instincts, but also be looking out for, like what we just said, is that how does he speak about, she speak about other people, and and dependability.
Yeah, I love the first thing that you said. There's actually some really good research. I forget the guy's first name, and I think he's out of Penn State University. The last name is Pennebaker, Pennebaker. He talks about expressive writing, and that is an interesting thing to journal about, right? Do I trust this person? Will this person be there for me long term? Can I trust this person to keep their word? Yeah, I like those things, right? There's a John Gottman talks about a trust metric that gets built in relationships. Like there's a trust meter, and it gets built by doing small things often. So that's the trust metric. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, I think we should see if we can find someone to unpack that with us more. Because I think because we date so short, so we don't have lots of experience in even little acts. So
yeah,
I want to explore that.
Small things often, I think. Yeah, and emotional responsiveness. Those are all good things. Very good. I love it, Devora. Thank you so much for.
All right. So David, how can people reach you?
My cell, you could put my cell in the chat. It's 516-241. 7. Personally, I always like to give out my phone number versus my email. I'm a talking kind of guy. I like to talk to people. I don't email is very not for everybody, but for me it's a very disconnected way of communicating. You want to talk to me, call me. I'm here.
All right.
If I can help you, it'd be my pleasure.
Okay, so that's 516-241-1177.
That's correct.
All right. So
thank you
so much. And if anyone has any other questions, you can definitely reach us at Adai Ad on our website, adaiad.org, and to find the button to reach out to us. And if anyone has any other questions about dating, definitely reach out. And again, you can reach out to Dr. David Mark. And thank you so much for this important talk. And thank you all. Good night.
Thank you. All the best. Have a great night, Devora. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.